Okay, so we're talking about two of the biggest injuries to two of the most important guys that we have seen over the past 24 hours. And the newest one comes to us over a bunch of tweets. This is the Elliot Friedman one, going out there and talking about how for the New York Rangers, Blake Wheeler is out for the rest of the regular season. A postseason run is considered unlikely, although it's not 100% ruled out, depending on how far the Rangers go. And if you watch the video, it's Blake Wheeler. He is trying to get up. He's not getting up. It's very difficult to watch. And when it comes to the actual incident here, I mean, you could see it in the corner. He's right there. He gets tangled up. He falls down, and he is recoiling on his back. Not a good look at all. And when it comes to Blake Wheeler, with the news now that he's going to be out for the rest of the regular season, this puts a really big strain on the New York Rangers and what they're going to be able to do. Wheeler was a first-line player for this team. Now, you could very well say that him being on that first line was somewhat unjustified. You could say that he probably deserved to be elsewhere. But at the end of the day, what you're seeing here is a top-line winger on this particular team who plays with Zibanejad and Kreider, who is making only $800,000 a year. You gotta remember, he had signed this contract in free agency. He took a huge discount to come over to the Rangers, and you're gonna have to try and replace that guy. Not to say that Blake Wheeler is like a talentless bum. I mean, this season he's got 21 points in 54 games played, on pace for 32 over the rest of the regular season, which he is not going to play because he's out for the whole year. This is a very fair player, not replacement level in the slightest. A guy who last season had 55 points in 72 games played, and if you go back far enough, you'll see that the back-to-back 90-point seasons are pretty defying of what it was Wheeler was able to do. Just an overall leadership type of guy. He would make a few good plays once in a while. He'd put himself in the right spots, and there's a reason he would mesh on this first line for most of the year. It's just now you have to replace a first-line winger who is making such a cheap dollar amount that for the Rangers, I really don't envy what it is they're going to try to be able to do here with replacing Blake Wheeler. But of course, you know, depending on how far they go in the playoffs, if this could be some sort of a, let's just say, return story. Let's say the Rangers make the second and the third round eventually. If that's around the time that Wheeler is returning, then hey, if the team is good enough to get that far without him, then adding him back on could make things a little bit more interesting heading into the final few rounds of the postseason. Or you could very well say that getting somebody on the team that late into the game could screw up with the chemistry. Who really knows? Because Zibanejad and Kreider are going to have themselves a new guy stepping up into that top line role, so if they develop new chemistry with that new guy for the remainder 30-something games of the season and then into the postseason, then maybe Blake Wheeler's spot would really be in jeopardy at that point. So we'll see what happens here for the Rangers. You could say that a top-line right wing is a part of their need. Also, maybe a bottom six center, bottom six forward as well. There's a little bit more depth that you could add to this squad, but it's all going to depend on what exactly it is they decide to do. So we'll keep our eyes open for the New York Rangers and their entire progression post-Blake Wheeler injury. This is going to be a pretty interesting story to follow, so we'll make a few update videos as everything goes along here. But Blake Wheeler, of course, is only one of the two injuries I wanted to talk about in this video. The other one is just a little bit down south in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, as the Penguins have announced that they have placed Jake Guentzel on the IR as he is expected to miss up to 4 weeks. This is the update. It comes after yet another injury, and the Penguins, in response, they have recalled forwards Jonathan Gruden, Vinny Hinostroza, and Valtteri Pustinen from the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. Forward Jake Guentzel has been placed on the IR. Guentzel is expected to miss up to 4 weeks, with a projected return to the Penguins in early March. Now, that is very interesting. A projected return to the Penguins, not to the NHL, not to hockey, whatever. They're saying he's returning to the Penguins. And when it comes to the trade idea, Pierre LeBrun went out there and said it. Yeah, Guentzel's out up to 4 weeks. The trade deadline is 3 weeks away. This changes everything for the Vancouver Canucks and for the Edmonton Oilers, two teams that have been linked to Guentzel this entire time. You could debate whether or not the Canucks would still be linked to Guentzel, considering they already gotten a new top six forward in Elias Lindholm, but they still have a bunch of other assets to trade away if they wanted to get a Guentzel trade. It's just now, you have to go out there and really believe in the talent profile that he possesses, because the fact that he's going to be out for a month without any significant time to come over and adapt to his new team, that's going to be challenging for any team wanting to project Guentzel onto a playoff roster. He's at 52 points in 50 games right now. He has been just over a point per game the entire time, pretty much. He's always been such a great player for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's a cup champion because of it. He has been playing with Crosby and excelled with Crosby. There was sort of an idea floating around by Penguins fans that I saw asking the question, hey, how good is Guentzel going to be really without Sidney Crosby? Like, if you put him with Elias Pettersson or if you put him with Connor McDavid, like, how good is he really? Who really knows? But we may have ourselves a longer time than necessary to find out whether or not it actually would work, because the fact that he's going to be out for a while makes things more challenging for whatever team that's going to go out there and try to make their trade deadline acquisitions. Also, what makes this conversation even more, let's just say, frustrating for whatever team it is that's going to go out there and try to get him, is if you're a team that's not really in the playoff race or you're kind of hovering around there, you kind of need to be able to force yourself into the postseason. Like, any kind of a Guentzel trade would obviously be to a contending team, but if you're just on the outside looking in, then a 4-week timeline, maybe about a week's worth of time after the trade deadline, after you acquire a guy like Guentzel, for him not to play, that would be pretty significant, I would say. And that is only the projected return timeline. That's not the guaranteed timeline. If he's out for 4, 5, 6 weeks even, that wouldn't really be all too surprising, considering how injuries in the NHL seem to work. If he spends more time on the IR and whatever team that acquires him doesn't have him for more time, that's less time for him to develop chemistry when he comes back, and that's less competitiveness from whichever team that gets him trying to make the playoffs if he's on their roster. So this puts an entire monkey wrench into the conversation of playoff contending teams going out there and trying to get Guentzel. Whether it is Vancouver, whether it is Edmonton, you could very well say, for Vancouver, they're fine. Like, if they trade away a bunch of prospects, they trade away some money, and they get Guentzel onto their team, they've got such a big cushion on the rest of the league that you could very well say they don't really have much of a struggle in worrying about whatever recovery time exists for Guentzel. Plus, you have the fact that so many of these Canucks have been injured throughout the year. You've got the Carson Soucies out there, you had Pia Sutar for a moment, yet they're still first in the NHL by 6 points, and their points percentage is up there with a huge margin over everybody else, that for them, they could afford to maybe lose a few games whilst waiting for a Jake Guentzel to return, or wait for him to get chemistry developed with some of the other guys here. But of course, the biggest link between Guentzel and Vancouver happens to be in the form of the other Canucks executives that exist, the Alvins, the Rutherfords, and then of course you've got Phil Kessel that could be talked about too. Imagine having Guentzel, Kessel, and whomever else added onto this team. That could be funny. And then for the Edmonton Oilers, you could say that the conversation's a little bit different about them. They are slowly clawing themselves back up. They are now third in the Pacific Division. They could catch up to Vegas. They very well could. But is there enough room? Is there enough leeway for them to experience a Guentzel recovery whilst they try to make everything work out for them heading into the postseason? So this Jake Guentzel conversation is probably the more interesting of the two, but for Blake Wheeler of the New York Rangers, this also cannot be discounted as well. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about Blake Wheeler and Jake Guentzel's injuries affecting their seasons and affecting their teams as they head towards the trade deadline? If you're a fan of the Rangers, if you're a fan of the Penguins, how do you think this changes your strategy? And if you're a fan of the Canucks or the Oilers, what are your thoughts on Jake Guentzel now that he is out? And he will be out until after the trade deadline comes and goes. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.